From the earliest days, KIPP has always said, when Mike and Dave started it, we're going to help our kids climb the mountain to college and a life with options, filled with options. I think it was around 2010, 2011, where our alums were getting old enough where we were actually seeing, well, what's playing out? We had all these young people, first in their family, they work so hard through high school, they go to college, and then we discovered that getting to college is not the same thing as getting through college. And it was a big wake-up call, and we had to step back and say, what's going on? What are we not doing that we should be doing, and how are we going to course correct? One of the proudest moments for me personally is that the organization, collectively across the country, our board, decided that we were going to share this learning with the world and not keep it to ourselves. Because so many people were following us and saying, okay, the message is how do we help first-gen kids succeed? And here we were a little bit out front just by virtue of how long we've been at the work. And so we published our first ever college completion report in 2011, where we told the world, here's how it's playing out. We looked at all our kids who were 6 or more years out of high school, and we saw that about 36% of them had a BA degree. And I think that was it was a big wake-up call for us. It was a big wake-up call for our network to grapple with it, but also I think a great moment for all of us in this work to recognize that we're going to have to figure out ways to do better than that. And that's what we've been doing really, if I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, we've been steadfastly focused on improving that. I do want to say a couple things because I get this question everywhere I go. Why does college matter? Why are you so focused on college? And so the first thing I want to say is, since I graduated from college in 1989, the value of a college degree, the earnings power of a college degree relative to a high school degree has grown dramatically. No one will debate that. There's no evidence to the contrary anywhere. So it's at least 50% more powerful relative to a high school degree in one generation, probably growing even more. The delta between earnings of those with a college degree versus without during the recession grew again. And coming out of it, all the jobs that first came back went to those with degrees. So for all the noise out there, and I think it is so important because we could be really sending messages to young people that aren't helpful. Even with the debt issue, even with the rise in the cost of college, those with a college degree are doing far better than those without. Secondly, when Americans are surveyed, when Pew does its research and they ask young people ages 25 to 32, how do you feel about your college degree? You would think, given all the messaging and all the stories about kids not, living at home on a parent's couch, kids working as baristas who thought they'd be working in real estate or finance or whatever they thought, you would think that people would be very down on a college degree. Absolutely not true. When you ask 25 to 32-year-olds who've grown up during this unbelievable recession, gone through it, overwhelmingly, they respond that their college degree has been pivotal to giving them options. So I start with that because it always becomes this question, why do we care? We care because it actually, in this day and age, is determinant to having options. So it is really important that you put on the record that in spite of all the noise out there about whether college is worth it, there's no evidence to indicate at this point in history that it isn't. The second thing I will say is, for all the debates about debt in this world, the reality is the debt issue for Americans is just about really kids who don't finish, and the biggest issue are kids who have under 10,000 hours of debt without a degree. So just really, really important. Last thing I want to say, because it's again one of the most pressing questions we get, is well, what about the kids who don't go to college? And our answer is this, which is nothing prepares you for life, whether you go to college or not, than a great education, than a great rigorous college prep education. And even for those who say, well, someone could become an electrician, or become a police officer, go into law enforcement, or become a plumber. The skills required to get those jobs today now are the same skills that are required for college admission. And so we're committed to a college prep education, both for those who will go and those who won't. When we published our report in 2011, one of the most important things and moments where we questioned, should we be doing this, but we pushed ahead, was to reveal to people that if you're really committed to helping your kids climb this mountain, you got to be talking about all your kids. And not just the kids who walk across the stage and get a diploma. And I think it's really important for us as a movement. If we're going to lead, if we're actually going to be leaders in discussions of what kind of public education we need to offer in America, We have to be open about that. So there are all these, for years we get all these end of year emails and notes saying 100% of our kids are going to college, 100%. And it's actually, I think, a disservice. And it's a disservice for more than one reason. First, it's a disservice because the fine print is 100% of our graduating seniors got a college admission letter. Let's break that down. That isn't 100% of our incoming freshmen. And so if you're going to be honest about the challenge in America, when people talk about the dropout crisis or people talk about the number of kids who are prepared for college and the workforce, they're talking about every kid. They're not talking about the kids who made it and walked across that stage. And so our report laid that bare. We said, look, we're talking about every 8th grader. How did they do? Not every senior and not every graduating senior. And the reality is, part of the reason we're not where we want to be is not every 8th grader went on to college. The second issue that I think we need to be open about is everyone was talking about, oh, they're getting admission to college. Well, did they go? There's a big issue of summer melt. A lot of young people growing up first-gen families don't actually end up enrolling. Then we dug in some more and we said, well, still, why, even if we have the majority of our 8th graders admitted to college, and even if the majority of them then go on to college, why don't we have more than 36% getting a BA degree? And here's what we found. Our guidance process was completely inadequate to the challenge. If you look at the class of 2013, our seniors in 2013, 82% of the applications they submitted, our seniors, went to schools that, based on that class's GPA and ACT scores, would either be viewed as almost guaranteed admission schools or schools the odds of admission were less than 10%. So literally more than 8 in 10 of our kids' applications were going to schools that were in the very far end of the spectrum and very little in the middle. That is not what's happening for affluent kids and middle-class kids in America. They were told, no, when you're applying to college, you want to look at schools that would be a reach, schools that would be a sweet spot, a 1 in 2 chance of getting into, and schools that you'd be most likely to get into. So we realized we need to redo this whole process. Over the last 3 years, we've gone at it. In 2014, when we were just learning this, only 1 in 10 KIPP students, KIPP seniors, applied to 6 or more colleges across a spectrum of selectivity. 2 years later, this year, almost 6 in 10 kids did. This is something we can all do. There's nothing about this that is special to KIPP, but it was a huge part of what we had to learn. Second thing that we're grappling with, that I think, again, all of us are, this is not a KIPP-specific issue. 4 out of 10 KIPP seniors, when offered admission to more than one college, enroll in the college whose graduation rates are more than 10 points below the other option they had. Think about that. These are all kids, 95% African American, Latino, first in their family to get to this moment. And 4 out of 10, when presented with more than one option, choose an option whose graduation rate is not as good as the others on the table. We own that as well, and we're digging in to solve for that. So our objective is, we think near term, we want to see 1 out of every 2 KIPPsters get a BA degree. We think that's absolutely achievable. To do that, we need to be able to provide an education that's kindergarten through 12th grade. We learned middle school would not be enough if we're really about climbing that mountain to college. We learned we have to have outstanding guidance, make sure our kids are applying to the right mix of schools to optimize their chances of success. And the third thing we learned is, even doing that, where you go really matters. And so over the last 4 years, we have formed partnerships with 75 higher ed institutions across all ranges of selectivity, from community colleges in Austin, Texas, and New York City, to Duke University and the University of Pennsylvania. And we see these partnerships as a key lever to increasing success for first-gen kids across the country. We've learned we can't do this all alone, and we need partners with colleges and universities across the country. And so we stepped back and said, what are great colleges and universities that want to see first-gen kids succeed doing? And we found there's some common ingredients. So one is they understand that admission is not the end game, it's actually the beginning of the process. Some of our best partners, when you look at a school like the University of Pennsylvania, when you look at a school like Georgetown, they have summer programs where students actually have the opportunity, first-gen students, to experience campus life before school starts. Second, they recognize the need for really good, socialization and social supports. That first-gen kids, like our KIPP kids, but not only our KIPPsters, actually have a way of connecting with each other on campus for mutual reinforcement. They understand they need to offer really good financial aid packages. Our kids, when it comes time to choosing, need to make sure that they can graduate without overloading in debt. Some debt is actually fine. Too much debt isn't. And so can a school that does a really good job for kids make sure you leave with a reasonable amount of debt? Is it under $30,000? So when I look at institutions that get this, they are doing things to make it possible. At the most selective institutions, they're able to offer full packages. They can say no debt. That's the best imaginable, but not applicable to everyone. What else are they doing? We're asking them to really optimize their work-study programs. There are good work-study jobs, and there are not good work-study jobs. And we want to make sure when we sit down with them, what are the work-study opportunities? A great example of a great opportunity for one of our kids would be you could leverage an upperclassman to be coaching a cohort of incoming freshmen. That is their work-study opportunity. Think about the power of someone saying to freshmen, who are the most challenged group, first-gen group in a college, say, I was there. What are your issues? I'm here. An example of what a school can do. If I look at an example of what Franklin and Marshall has done, the president of Franklin and Marshall said, look, we're going to increase the number of Pell-eligible kids in this campus. We're going to go from 3 or 4% to 20% in a short period of time. Absolutely remarkable. What Dan Porterfield at F&M understands is that this is a talent. There's a talent war out there. There's amazing talent. It's everywhere. It's not just with affluent families. We have amazing talent in every part of this country. He's been able to do that in a handful of ways that require bold leadership. He said, we're going to get rid of this whole merit aid and go back to financial-based aid. This year we're going to have over 40 KIPPsters. I just read today. Just today, there's an article in the New York newspaper I saw. Someone brought it into my office. We'll have over 40 KIPPsters at the University of Pennsylvania this coming year. This is remarkable. We'll also have the full spectrum. We're going to have over 75 kids at San Francisco State. We'll have over 100 kids at San Jose State, over 100 kids at University of Houston. They're partners too. And we want to sit down with them and say, what is your typical graduation rate for a cohort, for an incoming freshman class? Working together, if we do these things, if we look at your financial aid packages, we look at work study, we look at whether you have a cohort program, we look at whether you have a single point of contact kids can reach, can we double your outcomes? If you look at the 40 most selective colleges in America, 3% of the students on those campuses grew up in the lowest economic quartile in this country. So we go to any of those 40 campuses, we start walking around, who do we meet? Only 3 out of every 100 students will come from the neighborhoods where our schools are located. And almost 75 out of 100 kids we meet on that same campus grew up in the top economic quartile. So we wonder, are there a lot of people in the country who think maybe this gig is up, maybe the whole thing is rigged? And if you looked at those top 40 campuses and you looked at their connection to the way power works in this country, where is power located? From where does it stem? How does it grow out? What networks are you involved in? How do you have relationships? These 40 institutions have a big leadership role to play. And if only 3% of their students come from the most disadvantaged parts of this country, we're not going to win. So I think people are recognizing, a handful of leaders early on are beginning to recognize they have this responsibility.